It's a lot easier for us to allow ourselves to get dragged through the mud and tolerate experiences, tolerate people that aren't good for us, hold on to connections that are ultimately toxic and not in line with what we want. But when we put it into perspective and we see who's actually playing the game, and we can see that it's that little version of us that needs the adult in us to come out and protect us, there is a different type of energy that can be evoked, and there's a different type of clarity that can come online that can have us say, no, this is it. If you are having a hard time getting over somebody, if there's someone in your life that you've been dating, somebody that you've had a connection with, and you're feeling like you just can't let go of them, I want you to pay really close attention to this video, because I want to open you up to a few ideas in a few ways that I have dealt with this in the past, and a place that I come from when I am working with my coaching clients to help them begin to see the situation differently so that they can experience some freedom and flexibility in the relationship and be able to make a decision for themselves that's ultimately going to serve their life and not lead them into deeper places of despair and stuckness. So the first thing I want to say, if you are in this situation right now and you're having a hard time getting over somebody, maybe you were in a relationship with them for a while and suddenly a breakup has occurred and you're wanting to get back together with them, they're not wanting to get back together with you. Or maybe you had a connection with somebody and you weren't necessarily in relationship, but there was the possibility of it turning into something beautiful, and maybe the connection just went sour or south and they don't want to talk with you anymore, or they don't want to connect with you anymore, and they don't see the possibility of anything with you anymore. I want you to know that I know that is a really difficult situation, and when we have our futures and our future identities tied up with somebody else and suddenly they don't want any part in it, it can feel like the rug is ripped out from underneath us. I want to talk about a couple different ways to look at this situation that I think are really significant. And the first one is, when I fall in love with somebody and when you fall in love with somebody, here is who is actually falling in love with that person. And now this is me. This is me at, I think, maybe 6 years old. My parents had a pin made of myself when I was a little kid. I don't know why they had pins made of themselves. I think my dad walked around and wore this on his shirt from time to time. But I want you to see that this is the guy. This is the guy who falls in love with people. This is the man, this is the boy who loves. And when we are broken up with, this is why it can be so devastating. It can rock us to our core. The heartbreak cuts all the way down to that little one inside of us. All of those different ages who love so deeply and who has an attachment to somebody and then suddenly might feel abandoned. And the first thing is to realize this little guy or this little girl, if you're a woman watching this, who is online, who is loving, who may be feeling abandoned, may be feeling like their future is ripped from them, and there is a reaction that is ancient. It's a very young reaction that tends to come out in us. It's an attachment wound typically. And just holding this in mind, that this is me and this is who is having an issue, who is having the problem, who is experiencing the pain, is really powerful, because what it does is it gives me an opportunity then to step outside of the experience and actually erect and evoke the inner father for myself to come online to look out for that little one. It evokes and allows the adult in my psyche to come out and care for that little one, rather than putting the expectation on that person to be the one to do it, which is often what we end up doing and why it can be so painful when we end up breaking up with somebody. So if I have been betrayed, or I have been dropped, or there has been a turn in terms of expectations around the relationship and I'm left single, this is a really powerful mechanism to get in touch with, because what it allows me to do is for me to be a ruthless protector of that little one inside of me. And when I say a ruthless protector, I don't mean an aggressive protector, but I mean someone who is willing to fight fiercely for love to keep that little guy safe. So we can imagine that little one running out and playing in a street. And if I am fathering that little one, I am going to use every single ounce of my being to get out there in the street and grab and pull him out from danger, out from the street. And I might reprimand him with love. I might look him in the eyes. I might get really present with him, and I might tell him what's good for him and what he's allowed to do and what he's not allowed to do. And it's all coming from love. And in these situations, if we're going to map this metaphor over to your life, the invitation here is, if you are feeling hung up on somebody who is actually not good for you and you know it deep down, what will it take for you to erect and allow the inner mother, the inner father to come out and to soothe that little one? Not just with only tenderness, but also a ferocity to protect her. To realize that if you had a daughter in this situation, how would you be with her in that? What would you tell her? If she was in danger, if he was in danger of being with somebody that was toxic, being with somebody that did not have the capacity to love them in the way that you ultimately know that they deserve to be loved, what would you say with them? Would you let them go continue to play in the street? Would you let them hang out with this person if ultimately it's toxic and it's hurting and poisoning this little one inside of you? Probably not. So for whatever reason, when we are in these situations and we don't have this perspective on that little one inside of us, it's a lot easier for us to allow ourselves to get dragged through the mud and tolerate experiences, tolerate people that aren't good for us, hold on to connections that are ultimately toxic and not in line with what we want. But when we put it into perspective and we see who's actually playing the game, and we can see that it's that little version of us that needs the adult in us to come out and protect us, there is a different type of energy that can be evoked, and there's a different type of clarity that can come online that can have us say, no, this is it. This person has qualified themselves out of my life, and I am moving on, and I am not going to stay in a situation that is ultimately going to poison and create toxicity for that little one inside of me. He or she is too precious, and I will fight for my life to protect this aspect of me from any outside forces that don't honor the priceless value of this little one's heart and capacity to love. I will create a boundary around it, and I will only allow this little one to play and to love and to interact with and be in relationship with people that are at the same level, that are willing to play the same game of love and transparency and vulnerability. And anybody who is not willing to step up to that level, I'm going to cut them out of my life, and I can do that lovingly, I can do that firmly, and I'm not going to look back with any regrets. Because the longer I keep that little one playing in some type of toxic dynamic, the more that little one will start to believe that that is what they deserve, that that is all that they can get. And I would rather have that little one be with me, and for me to have that little one's back and to love that little one, rather than to pass that little one off to somebody who ultimately doesn't have the capacity to be with that child in a way that honors the infinite value that he or she provides in a relationship. So if this video landed, if you're in this spot right now, try this perspective on, look into yourself and notice the age of the younger version of you that is hung up on somebody, that's caught up on a future possibility, and begin to see, if you were the parent of this little one, how would you protect he or she in the situation? What kind of rules, what kind of boundaries, what kind of love would you give to that little one so that you could keep them safe and protected and ultimately in line, playing in the backyard rather than in the street with traffic? I think this perspective can create a little bit of altitude in these situations that can seem so eclipsing when our heartstrings are being pulled by the possibility of love with someone. And the more that we can allow that parent to come online in these kind of situations, the more that we can make sober, clear decisions that are in line with our values and that ultimately keep us and create safe places for us to love and surrender, rather than it having to be some massive, irrational risk that leads to bitterness and more toxicity in our life. My name's CAYTON Olson, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please comment below if you're going through this situation, or if you'd like to ask a question. If you've got a different point of view, I'd love to hear that too. And please subscribe to the channel if you're wanting more insights around relationship philosophy, life philosophy, and ultimately becoming your best, most authentic self. Thanks for watching.